All right, friends, today we have Traci Schubert Barrett on the podcast. She wrote this amazing book, What If There's More, and has a fantastic story she's going to share with us today. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
So you have a fantastic story because you had the courage to leave HGTV, which is a network that you built from ground zero, and we're at the corner office in Chicago. Talk to us about that because that's huge.
Yeah, it was such an honor to be part of that network and really just the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. I always wanted to be in television. I wanted to be in television back when I was even in high school, and was able to get into broadcast TV in Chicago after graduation, and just wanted to be in the cable universe. So the cable universe back in the 90s was much like the podcast universe or the digital universe is today. And I was really excited to be part of kind of that wild west of cable TV. And cable networks were being launched left and right. And I had heard about HGTV. And
were you into home and garden and type things at that time?
No.
Okay.
I really, had been interviewing at different cable networks, and I had heard that somebody had an idea for a network and they were trying to put together a team. And so when I interviewed for it, I think I was about the 20th or 25th. I mean, it was a small group of us that started. And our founder, Ken Lowe, had come up with this idea. And he said, I want to do a true cable network where everything, all the programs are home and garden related, 24/7, and we're going to answer the true promise of cable. And he had such a clear mission, vision, core values. And I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And I was like, I want to be part of this. I want to help build something. I want to put my fingerprints on something. Mm-hmm. And so, we were like a scrappy group of entrepreneurs that hit the pavement and tried to, raise money and develop a program and get it on the air. And we launched at the end of 1994.
Okay.
And there were 25 other cable networks that launched in that end of 1994, beginning of 1995 timeframe. And only 2 of us survived, HGTV being one of them.
Wow. What, when you were in the beginning, like, how do you fill 24 hours worth of television? Mm-hmm. That is a lot.
Well, what's so funny is that for the first few years we were in existence, I mean, it was hard to find. We were trying to get on all the television, cable networks. And so the program, in a way, it was kind of good that not everybody could watch us because the programming was a lot of, gingham and gardening and all those things. And, we were just trying to build it, and we didn't have a ton of money. So it's not like we could go out and just like Bob Vila and Martha Stewart and pay them. We couldn't. Mm-hmm. So we had to slowly get there. And so it took a few years to really, get great programming and figure out that maybe gardening isn't going to give us the best ratings. And maybe, we need mm-hmm. to focus more on this. But after a while, we just got better and better at it, and it took off. And then everybody could get it on their cable channel, and it skyrocketed. I mean, we hit a trajectory, and then everybody knew. And from there, started buying other cable networks like the Food Network and built basically a media empire. And I was there for almost 20 years. So I saw it from zero revenue and just an idea all the way up to $1 billion media empire. I mean, it was a crazy ride that I'm forever grateful for. I loved it.
Oh, how fun. Do you have a favorite show?
Oh, goodness. Well, I love the Property Brothers. I love House Hunters. I think House Hunters is a little close to my heart because that was a turning point for us. That's when we really started garnering some great ratings, and a lot of people recognized who we were. And I just think the idea of the show was pretty revolutionary.
So what was the hardest part of walking away from HGTV, and how did you trust your leap of faith into the unknown and it would pay off?
The hardest part, I think, of walking away from HGTV was just leaving the people, leaving the environment. I had been there for, almost 2 decades of my life. I felt like I had grown up there alongside the network growing up. And I loved everything about what we had built. I loved my bosses and my staff and everything that had been created. I just felt so proud of it and very, very comfortable. So I was very comfortable in what I was doing and leading and making decisions. And it was just a very comfortable place to exist. I think that would have been the hardest part about leaving. So I always say to people, I wasn't pushed out. It wasn't like there was this crossroads where I got laid off. I just felt this weird pull. Like I kept saying to myself, which is the title of the book, what if there's more? What if there's more for me out there? What if there's more for me beyond how I feel today, which is so much of my identity is wrapped up into this network because it had become so popular and so much bigger than who I was that I had become the person people would introduce as, oh, this is Traci from HGTV. And then everybody would want to talk about HGTV, which is great. Yeah. And I was very proud of it. But I had kind of lost touch with so many things, including who I was outside of this universe and what do I really want in life. And I had checked off all these boxes that I was supposed to. You know, I had gone to high school and gone to college and got married and had kids and had a successful career and was sitting at the top of a skyscraper in Chicago overlooking, you know, in my corner office. And I felt like, okay, well, what's next? What are the boxes that are, am I just supposed to retire or am I supposed to stay here? Or is there something more to me? And I just could not answer those questions sitting at my desk, running a network, being on a plane all the time. And I just felt like, how am I going to solve this puzzle for myself? And am I allowed to even investigate if there's something else for me on the other side?
Yeah. No, I can just think of like, I own a company and I've hired myself out of a job. So I'm not really there anymore. And that transition of having the title, I know, like, it's just so much of your identity.
Yes.
Or even like, this is going to sound so silly, but even I fly Delta all the time because we're a Salt Lake hub. And when they know you're in the Million Mile Club, like all this kind of stuff. And then sometimes it makes sense to fly Southwest. And you're just like a nobody. No one cares. You board the plane whenever. Like it's just mayhem. And you're just like, oh, this is just so, like, I want to go back to my Delta, right? Like this is where I'm known and everybody, this is how it works. And it's crazy.
It is. It's scary to pull yourself out of an environment. I always say that, you know, the morning after I had this amazing going away party and everybody was so kind to me on my way out the door. But the next morning I felt naked.
Right.
I came downstairs and I'm wandering around the house after going 180 miles an hour since I was basically 17 years old and thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself, but I created this situation.
Right.
So
I have no one to blame.
But myself.
Yes.
And so how do you process through shifting your identity? And then how do I rebuild the pieces of the puzzle and figure out who am I today? Not who was I at 22 when I graduated from college or started in the business world. Who am I today in my 40s? What do I want out of life? And those are huge questions to answer. And they can feel super scary when you don't have the safety net of the title and the corporate job or even saying, okay, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom and that's going to be my identity. I didn't know what I wanted. Then I realized, oh, wait a second. Those are roles.
Right.
They're important roles, but they're just roles. They're just jobs. They're not who I am. And I think that was the biggest revelation that I made on the other side of my corporate career.
Yeah. I remember after my car accident and they're like, there's no way you're going to live, you know, all the things. And you come home and you get a call from the police station. They're like, we have no clue how you're alive. We've rebuilt this accident 50 different times. We cannot build a scenario where you walk away. And here you are. They're like, you must be here to do something significant. And so then I'm like, well, thanks for that. So that 2019 was this big search year. Why am I here? Who am I? What's my impact going to be? What does that look like? And it's a lot.
It can feel heavy. And I think that for most of us, those big questions, which are hard to answer, it's difficult for us to face them and answer them, not because we're dumb or we don't understand really who we are. It's because we're numb.
We gave up so much of ourselves in the pursuits of what we did that we don't even know.
We don't even know. We can't even feel. We don't even realize. We're so on autopilot, going through the emotions and motions that society has basically imparted upon us, that we're supposed to be successful. We're supposed to be all these things, all the while being a great mom and keeping the house together and having a great marriage and, you know, being a great boss and making good money, all the things. And you're thinking, this is almost inhumane.
Yeah.
What I feel like I'm supposed to be. So why don't I feel content and peaceful and calm and able to lean in and enjoy it all? And it really was because I was trying to do it all and do it all really, really well. And that just really set myself up for complete burnout and disconnection and really getting to a place where I was just operating on autopilot. And I think allowing ourselves the chance and hopefully not having to be in this life-altering car accident to get there. Right. I think that was my hope with the book, was like, I didn't have to quit my job. You didn't have to be in a car accident. Right. We could find a way as humans to give ourselves the space to figure out these questions without something dramatic having to smack us awake. But how do we awaken ourselves so that we can enter in this space and give ourselves permission to know who we are more deeply? But can we just let ourselves off the hook of what society says we should be doing and get more in touch with what we innately know we should be doing?
Yeah. I met with a therapist after the car accident, and she's like, what do you do for fun? And I was like, she's like, yeah, but that has an end result. Like everything I realized I was doing, like had milestones and markers and like this, if you're doing good or bad, or whatever. She's like, what do you do just for doing? I'm like, I don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And so one of the exercises I had to do in the beginning was I had to journal every day. And she's like, pick what color pen you want to journal in. I'm like, what color pen I want to journal? I'm like, she's like, just think about it. Like write with different colors and see how you feel. I'm like, what? I thought it was the most bizarre thing. But then one day I wrote in red. I'm like, I don't want to write in red. I feel like I'm correcting myself all the time.
I love that.
Right?
Yes.
I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this is different. It was just so funny to actually sit there and teach myself to notice because I'd just been so like, how do we get it efficiently and effectively done?
Yes.
It wasn't the noticing.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned to operate in that, you know, we have a left brain and a right brain, but we're so conditioned to get the job done in the best way. So as we've aged, we let go of that creative aspect of ourselves. And I was just reading this psychology study where it was a research project where they were NASA, this was way back in the 60s, had hired some psychologists to figure out who is a creative genius. So they came up with an assessment to measure for creative genius. And they found out that really only 2% of adults kind of measured into
like
this.
we lose it after kindergarten or something
creative
crazy.
Geniuses. And then they found out that 4 and 5-year-olds, they were testing 98% creative geniuses. And we just have lost that with ourselves. But as soon as we get back into picking up the crayon or picking up the marker or allowing ourselves to dream or, you know, getting into nature, all of a sudden so much is unlocked and we are reconnected to what our purpose is and what we can achieve and accomplish and feel.
And feel. Feel's the big one. When did you realize that success wasn't enough?
I think it was when I felt like I had gotten to the top and felt dissatisfied. I tell the story in the book about, you know, being at a Dream Home, HGTV Dream Home giveaway, which was my favorite event. We had it every year. And it was always in this fabulous home, usually on the coast somewhere or some great location. And there was always great talent there that you'd want to meet, that you'd see on HGTV. And we'd bring our top clients. And being an executive was a great honor because you get to go and give away the home. And so I always looked forward to it. And I can remember just standing there in some fabulous location with a glass of wine, probably chatting it up with the Property Brothers or whatever, just thinking, I don't know if I want to be here. And I'm feeling disconnected and sad. And I can remember going to the airport and not remembering where I was and where I was going. And just thinking, this is not how life is supposed to be. And I think that was a big wake-up call for me because I was like, if I have accomplished everything I set out to do, why don't I feel like I've made it? Sadly, I feel like I could have gotten there without leaving my job, but I didn't have the tools to figure out, how can I change my perspective on work where I can feel like I'm connected to who I am and I am having an impact no matter what I do. And that's why I went off and started to work on these tools to how to answer these questions and how to get to a better place, which eventually led to what I'm doing now. But I wish, like I was saying before, that I didn't have to leave my job or people didn't have to have these like life-altering experiences to answer these questions. And I'm really happy it happened to me. What it's all about is changing your mindset and changing your perspective on not just who you are, but how you can approach the world and how you can interact with other people around you, and really embracing the idea that no matter how big or small, we can leave a positive legacy. But we have to wake up to that.
So somebody that's listening right now that feels like they're on the treadmill and they're just going through the motions, what's something that you recommend them starting with to spark that curiosity?
I recommend that they get to a calm and quiet place. And whether that's in nature, whether that's, in their backyard, wherever that is, where they can get quiet with themselves and reintroduce themselves to themselves and start answering the question of what are my unique gifts and talents? What do I really want? And I think it sounds easy, like, oh, okay, I'm going to go into the backyard with a journal. But I'm always surprised with how scary that sounds to people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, well, and you can hear the excuses and you can hear the pushback because when you're going through the motions and you're doing all the things you think you're supposed to do that are going to make other people happy and also make you look good to society.
That validation.
It's scary to think, I'm going to get quiet with myself and I bet you I'm going to realize I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to realize I'm not doing what I should. Yeah. And then what do I do with all that?
No, I remember when I first got into mountaineering, I was not a mountaineer. Like I had never slept in a tent before or anything like that. But the exciting thing about doing something that I had no reputation in, no expectation in, no idea of, is that I realized I get to create this whole entire thing, right? Like there's no story that's already been written or to be fulfilled. It is this moment, this time, this whatever. And when you're climbing, there's so much downtime and you sit there and you listen. I'll remember like the people in Nepal were making lunch for us or something. And I went in there and they were super busy and they were talking to each other in Nepalese. So I couldn't understand what they said. And I went outside and I remember thinking, all these things, right? Like I didn't help them or like all this story that I had written that had nothing to do with me. And so when we ate dinner as the group, then they came out and they're like, here's the cake that Jenn helped make, where I thought they kicked me out because I was doing a bad job or whatever. Cause that's like, right. And so you realize when you can't speak the language of somebody and you're looking at body language or voices or different things, which have nothing to do with what you're normally used to, how much this plays in a role into what you're doing.
Yes.
It gave me a total like, wow, I can use my mind to empower me or I can use it against me. And it's only me that gets to decide how it's being used.
I love the saying that nobody talks to you more than you.
Right.
I mean,
you bring that up in the book.
Yeah,
I was like, guilty, guilty.
And you're writing the script, but you also have the power to rewrite that script.
Yep.
And to write it in a way that's going to fill you up and that is going to give you, the permission to be who you want to be. But that's a battle. It's a constant battle. We're fighting all those, I talk about the patterns, all those things that have been implanted upon us and imprinted upon us when we were kids. And we're fighting against the, disbeliefs we have about ourselves, the negative thoughts and things that, hold us back. And it's a battle. We're going to battle every single day in our mind and reframing those things in a way where we can be the best versions of ourselves. And I think that's really what most everybody wants. They want to be at peace and be the best versions of themselves. And so, the two questions I'm always asking when I'm coaching clients is, what does it feel like to be you? But really, only you know that. What does it feel like to be you? Is it a struggle? Do you like yourself? Are you struggling with liking yourself? Do you feel content? Do you feel like you're chasing something you shouldn't? And then what does it feel like to be on the other side of you?
Right.
How do you feel that people might be receiving you? Do you know? Do you ask?
I do this with my kids. I have a parent report card. It's interesting because at first they were afraid to not give me A's. They're like, okay, this is not a healthy environment, which was a big, and so then I'm like, guys, I am not a straight A mom. So I want you to think really, really hard and find an area where I could improve on compared to where you are. And then they started getting more comfortable and giving me honest feedback. And it was just teeny tiny little things that I'm like, I am so glad I know this about you because now I can love you the way that you want to be loved. And that's my favorite thing to do.
Oh my gosh. You're teaching them as their authority figure that it's good to ask for feedback, that it's okay to, want to know where your blind spots are and to get better. And that you're not perfect and that you need forgiveness and that you need grace. And for them to see that role modeled, the impact that's going to have for them as coworkers and as leaders is unreal. You'll probably never get to realize the seeds you've planted.
It's normalized.
But that is so much of what your legacy is going to be. Those 7 beautiful creatures are going to be able to know that they don't have to be perfect. And they can actually strive for just progress every day.
Okay, so in writing this book, which writing a book is so much self-discovery, isn't it? And so much vulnerability of like, do I share this story? Am I giving too many details? Is the cadence the right speed? Are you enjoying it? What did you learn during the process?
I had talked about writing the book for about 10 years, and then I turned 50. And on my 50th birthday, my husband said, either stop talking about the book or write the book.
Oh, wow.
And that was a turning point for me because I was like, really? Like, I can do it? Or, it's as if I needed somebody to give me permission. And he said, no, write the book. You've been talking about it and collecting things and getting your ideas together for about 10 years, and you need to write the book. And it was such a cathartic experience. And it's so much of my story. And I think, as you know, writing a book, like the first draft, you're just like, ugh, this is awful. It's not going to work. And then you realize, okay, I just need to form it up. And I also realized, and I had a friend who said this to me, you've got to put you in the book. You have to get vulnerable and tell those stories that you don't want to tell. And one of the first crossroads with that was writing about having rheumatoid arthritis and how I had kept that a secret for so long because I didn't want to seem weak.
I know.
And wrestling with that whole concept of like, what did that mean? And why did I want to feel weak? And I think writing about that and saying to myself, like, look, the type of books you like to read are when people are real. And you can tell they're not sugarcoating things and they're just letting you see their warts and all. So if you don't want to let them see your warts and all, then don't write the book. And I think that was the hardest thing, was just saying, okay, I'm going to put my messiness in here. And then when it was time to publish, I had a little bit of a panic attack. I was like, I cannot believe every person that's ever known me is going to have access to this and they're going to be able to read it. And it was my daughters sharing this with them, like, this feels super vulnerable and maybe I should just keep it for myself. And they were like, Mom, there are lots of people that get bad comments on TikTok or bad reviews on Amazon. It happens to everybody, but this is your thing. You have to put yourself out there. And in that moment I knew, well, this is going to be bad if I don't. And whatever happens on the other side, who cares? I accomplished something I've always wanted to accomplish. I've put my thoughts out there. I've put my experience out there. I've shown my daughters that you can accomplish a goal and whatever happens on the other side, let the world decide, but that's not what's most important. And I think, pushing through that fear was definitely the hardest part of writing the book. Writing the book was not hard. It just came out of me. It was my life. But pushing through the fear to publish it into the world and allow other people access was scary.
Yeah. But I think even what I love about the arthritis story is it's so real for all of us, right? We have this thing that we don't want to identify with. So we're going to pretend it doesn't exist and put it in the corner as much as we can. And it is something that we have to learn how to integrate into our lives. And then something we have to own.
Yes.
And then something that once we get to the other side, we can talk about it without having the energy of negativity around it. Right. And so that journey that you shared in the book is a journey we all have. It just has a different name.
Yes.
Right. And so that to me was, it just gave me permission on some things that I'm not ready. I think they tell you can talk from the scar, not from the wound. Right. And it just allowed me to identify, oh, these things are still wounds and these things are scars. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's human.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think allowing people to enter into your pain is so helpful for their journey in social media, where everything is so fabricated and everything looks so perfect and everybody looks so beautiful and airbrushed, that the fear of allowing people to see your wrinkles and your scars and your truth has become harder. We can strive for contentment and we can strive to feel peace in our lives, but we're not always going to feel happy. And we have to create a perspective of our life that allows for bad things to be wrestled through and allows for good things to be celebrated. But we need both if we're going to mature and if we're going to have wisdom. And so if we push it all down and if we always paint the perfect picture, we are so not just robbing ourselves, but we're robbing our impact that we could have on the world around us. And I think that's why, when I look at my teenagers, I think, gosh, it's so much harder for you all.
Yes.
I mean, you have to wrestle through fact and fiction constantly in what you're seeing with your eyes, what you're reading, and the pressure that they're up against. I mean, I felt like I was up against pressure, but it's nothing compared to you can never shut it off.
I love the book because it kind of breaks life up into act 1 and act 2. So act 1 is like, we're on the treadmill, we're checking the boxes, we're doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. And then you have this aha moment, which for you was like these constant little questions or curiosities of like getting curious about a feeling that doesn't align. And then now you've just opened this door of act 2. And it's a lot longer than it's ever been in history. So it's this new territory that we're navigating. But you help with the strategic life map. And you kind of give us this little framework to look at. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I really like that section.
I feel like we need a framework. Frameworks are good. And I think plans are great. But then when we reach act 2, whether that's midlife or whatever crossroads you come to, and you're starting to look to the future, you have to create that vision for yourself. And knowing who you are, knowing how you're gifted, and then embracing that and owning that, and then imagining what the next decades could be. And I think that was super fun for me to write about in the book because of the whole longevity mindset of realizing that we're living longer, we're living healthier than we ever have if we choose. We do live in America, and there's a lot of
choices that do not.
A lot of choices that people are not making good ones. But if we choose to embrace a longer, healthier life, we can. The options are there. The information is there. And I feel like the whole concept of retirement is fuzzy now.
Yeah.
You don't just like retire at 62 and you get the gold watch and you hit the golf course, right?
Right.
Now it's like, no, I'm gifted. I have all this wisdom. I might not want to work the way I did in my 20s, but how can I impact the world and use those gifts and talents in this way? But also, how can I be available to my family? And how can I be available to my friends? Creating a strategic life map. And I use the same strategic planning tools we use in the business world. Let's take those tools. And I have my master's in psychology, so I just pulled a lot of those concepts. Yes. What drives us, because I feel like what drives us is really what defines us and defines our choices. And so if we can rejigger what defines us and drives us, and then create a map about what we really want to have, we're going to be excited about the years ahead. And we're going to embrace these next decades instead of aging out. And that is very different from my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation. that, had different viewpoints of aging and expectations of themselves and of others. We've sort of busted that wide open in this generation. And I think it's the most exciting time in history to be aging.
Oh, I agree. Well, when I got out of my car accident, I was in finance before. And so we always did financial plans in decades, right? You're like, this money you don't need for 30 years and this money you don't need for whatever. And, and so then I was like, okay, I'm in my 40s. So I'm going to map out my next decades. And like, I'm going to start slotting activities that are going to be easier to do when I'm younger and harder. Like museums are not on my bucket list until my 90s. I'm not climbing mountains in my 90s. So I'm going to put these up here. And I started shuffling all that. But then you start looking at these things and it gives you this finite time, which then gives you this hustle of like, I want to live and experience and do and see and show and share and just fun.
Yeah. And it also takes away the pressure that you have to get it all done in a New York minute.
Yeah.
You don't have to reach all these things and do all these things and exhaust yourself and burn yourself out. You have time. And it helps us take a breath, and it pushes us out of hustle culture, and it pushes us into a more livable life where we're living it instead of it's living us. As you grow your, in your strength as you age is such an important thing. And I think
so important.
I think this whole embracing the future and really looking at all aspects of our body, the physical strength, the mental strength, the emotional strength, the spiritual strength, and really saying, okay, in this next facet of my life, what can I do? And I do this in Strategic Life Map. I help my clients really imagine and dream what they can do to strengthen each area of their life from a health perspective. And so often we underestimate what we can do physically, or we underestimate how we can get stronger mentally.
And I think one feeds the other, right? When I'm physically strong, then my mental game helps. When my mental game is strong, then it helps my physical game. When you climb a mountain, there's different periods where different parts will fail, right? Like your mental starts like falling apart. So then you can't focus on your mental and you're like, okay, I just need to take this next step. And then I need to take the next step. I need to take the next step. And then you're in a different space and now your body's feeling tired and then your mind's going to kick in. And when you have these different areas developed, you can get so much further up your mountain because you have the different places to rely on.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And it's amazing how pushing yourself physically has unlocked so much mentally and spiritually for you, where you are so in touch.
I am. It's crazy. Even like yoga or whatever, right? Like I used to look at how it had to be. And then I would judge myself in yoga class, of course, because that's my brain. And then all of a sudden I realized it doesn't have to look like that in my body. My body's different. And then I started to feel like the body movement and stuff. And it's just this whole journey that we're all on.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I love it. And we're all on it. And when we talk about it,
yeah,
it allows other people to enter in and to, again, give themselves permission to design the life that they want for themselves.
Yeah. And you talk about stretch goals and the thing. Why do you feel that's so important for people?
I think it's important because, that whole idea of, getting to the moon, that moonshot goal and having something like that, you feel like if you accomplish it, it's going to be something you wanted.
Yeah.
It's not like college. We all have something that's whispering to us that we want to do. And if we had all the time and money in the world, we'd do it, right? And so for some of us, it sounds like a small goal. And for some other people, it sounds like it's really huge. And it doesn't matter the size of it. It really matters what it means to you. If I do this, but if I accomplish it, I'm going to feel more of me. I'm going to feel like I did something I've always wanted to do. And I've realized a dream. And I think that's important for all of us because, ultimately, we all just want to reach our full potential. And when we do things and don't realize dreams and we push things to the side, we're not realizing our full potential. And then we wonder why we don't feel fulfilled. Having a moonshot goal forces us to ask the question, what is my full potential? What are the things that I'm capable of? And so I think it's really unlocking what's the best version of me and what does it mean to reach my full potential? And usually in that journey, there's a moonshot goal.
No, I remember when I took on Everest, right? Like my son challenged me to climb Everest instead of another mountain I was climbing. I hadn't slept in a tent before and it scared me. But then I realized if I fail at Everest, who cares? I was on Everest. I mean, how many people can even say they dared to go do Everest, right?
Really.
And so then you get like, that's what the moonshot goal does for us though, right? Because even if we don't reach the summit, the experience has been so amazing for our souls and ourselves that shifts things. We have a ripple effect on how we show up.
Yeah.
And when you are living this passion within you, it flows into everything you do.
And it unlocks a fear. It unlocks your fear. Like I was saying about writing the book, it unlocked the fear in me. And I'm sure climbing a mountain like Mount Everest or any mountain unlocked the fear. You're like, okay, now I see what
Or
what
you
I've been holding back.
experience the fear and you realize your mind made it worse.
Yes.
Right? Like, 'cause
Yes.
I had to turn around on a couple of mountains and I was like, everybody knows I'm doing this. Everybody's watching. I can't believe we didn't get to the top. And then you realize, but that's life. And so now I'm showing people how you metabolize these experiences and you go back and not everything is a straight shot up top, right? Like sometimes you have to climb down to climb up.
Right. And listening to your gut that
Yeah.
sometimes you have to recalibrate
Definitely.
or refuel or do whatever it is that you need. It doesn't mean that you failed. It just means this is the route. This is the journey to the ultimate destination. And we know it's all about the journey, right?
Yeah.
So what is that journey going to look like for you is going to be different than what it looks like for me. And that's perfectly okay. But you're teaching people that you can navigate the bumps on the road. That doesn't mean you can't still get to the end goal.
Yeah, definitely. You guys, right? Like, do you see why listen, this world has been blessed with Traci. She wrote this book for us. What if there's more? If she did not have the courage to leave HGTV and lean into who she was, it's a difference. It's a huge difference. And so having you here and having all of you listening, like, think about this because you have a huge impact to leave. And life is more than success. It's about significance. So thank you.
Thank you.
I love it.